High chances are ushapita Tao CBD Nairobi ukaona Muindi Mbingu Street. And probably you asked yourself, kwani who was this Muindi Mbingu? Was he an Indian or an African? Na kwani, how good was this guy that street ikanemiwa after yeye? Well, hata mimi nilikuwa na the same questions. Nikaamua kuingia kwa rabbit holes kuchimba chimba and you will not believe what I found out about this guy. This guy is legendary. This guy is the definition of courage. Let me tell you. Now, before even we go into that story, itabidi nianze na the traditional African society. You know that in our traditional African societies, having cattle was part of someone's wealth. The more cattle you had, the more wealthier you became. Cattle were even form of currency. Cattle were what defined economies in our traditional African societies. This was true for the Akamba people, especially in Machakos. Fast forward comes the white colonialist. The white colonialist takes up most of the fertile lands for themselves, and then they put the Africans in reserves. Reserves were less fertile and less desirable places. So this is where the Africans were secluded. We had the Machakos Reserve where the Akamba people were living. And even despite being secluded in a reserve, still they had some form of self-reliance through what? Through cattle keeping. This was true until 1929, when the colonial government did some report on some research on why there is poverty within the Machakos Reserve. And they gave two main reasons for this poverty. Number one was overgrazing, which consequently leads to number two, which is soil degradation. Now, they claimed that the Machakos Reserve could only support up to 53,400 cattle, but the Akamba people in Machakos were grazing over 245,000 cattle. And this is what was causing soil degradation and the poverty. Now, within 1929 to 1934, the colonial government proposed a number of measures to the Machakos Local Native Council on how to curb this soil degradation and poverty. And some of those measures included an end to free-range grazing. Here, sahi Wakamba wataruhusiwa tu kuchunga ng'ombe, anyhow live le mnataka kuzurura, no. Number two, they wanted them to build terraces, to dig trenches, and plant napier grass, and sisal trees. Well, the Akamba people didn't like these measures because it was infringing in their way of life, but they accepted them. Fast forward, in 1938, the Colonial Agricultural Commission and the Carter Land Commission proposed a destocking policy where the Akamba people were not to be allowed to have more than 4 cattle. Yeah, ikifika past 4, hizo zingine si zako, wewe unakuwa na 4 only. Now, the same year, the colonial governor, Sir Robert Brooke, supports a British-owned meat canning farm to establish their presence within the Machakos Reserve. And then he announces the destocking policy, where the Akamba people were supposed to sell the surplus cattle, which is like anything beyond 4 cattle. They're supposed to sell them to this meat canning farm. Of course, the Akamba people are not happy. Walijam, and they wanted to revolt about this. And that's where our guy, Samuel Muindi Mbingu, comes in. The Akamba people approached Samuel Muindi Mbingu, who was a local policeman who had mastered the English language. And they told him, Oya, niaje, we need you to represent us. You know, talk with these people, talk with the white man, talk with the governor, mwambia tutaki this destocking policy. Samuel Muindi Mbingu was like, yeah, juu pia alikuwa amejam na hii destocking policy. So he said, why not? Let me represent you guys. So, in March 1938, Muindi Mbingu, the first step he took was sending a telegram to the governor, requesting him to stop the destocking policy, that the Akamba people don't want this, that it's infringing their way of life, that they're okay with how they are living. The governor did not hear it. In fact, in May the same year, he implemented the destocking policy. By July the same year, about 20,000 cattle had been seized forcefully from the Kamba people and sold to the meat canning farm. Muindi Mbingu wrote another telegram and sent to the governor to request him, tafadhali, stop this destocking policy. The governor did not hear any of it. So, Muindi Mbingu, together with Elijah Kavulu, Simon Kioko, and Isaac Mwalongi, they reached out through letters to the Kikuyu Central Association in Nairobi. They also publicized their plights through the Kikuyu nationalist publication, the Muigidhania. Through reaching to the Kikuyu Central Association, they gained an ally in Jomo Kenyatta, who is also a member of the KCA. But at this time, Jomo Kenyatta is based in London. Jomo Kenyatta writes letters to a number of bodies and newspapers, including the Manchester Guardian, to the League Against Imperialism, the Union of Democratic Control, the Fabians, and he also gets allies from Norman Lees and William Macmillan. Huyu Macmillan ndo wa the Macmillan Library yenye iko Tao. Yeah, if you have seen it, don't worry, kuna siku pia nitawaletea story ya this white settler. Despite all this, the colonialists did not stop. In fact, they demanded that all the Kambas should take their cattle to be marked. Ng'ombe zako 4 zimakiwe, hizo zingine zinabaki ziuzwe. The Kambas refused to comply. The colonialists one day wakafika Iveti and they confiscated 2,500 cattle. Wakaenda kuzigraze outside the Machakos reserve. And they said they're only going to return them if the Kamba people agree to have their cattle marked. Wazipeleke zimakiwe ndo warudishiwe hizi. The Kamba people did not protest violently, but they refused to follow them. They didn't go for their cattle, and they also didn't take their cattle to be marked. Through Muindi Mbingu, the Akamba people requested to have a meeting with the governor. At least they meet in person. Probably then atawasikiza. But the governor refused. And it's at this point that Samuel Muindi Mbingu organized a troop of 5,000 people from Machakos to Nairobi. Wakatembea on foot, Kalesa moja hadi Nairobi. 5,000 people. You think mobilizing 5,000 people in 1938 is an easy task? And to walk on foot from Machakos to Nairobi, it's an easy task. Well, Samuel Muindi Mbingu and the Kamba people did it. And they came to Nairobi up to a place called Kariakoo. Kariakoo comes from the name Carrier Corps. Carrier Corps, these were places which were designated for a number of corps that were enlisted into the army of the British force to help them fight the Germans within the East African region. This during the World War I. And these carrier corps were several in East Africa. We have one in Nairobi, we have one in Voi, we have one in Zanzibar. So yeah, there are a number of them. But we Africans thought it too difficult and cumbersome to call carrier corps, so hence the Kariakoo. And yes, that's where the Kamba people camped, around the race course. And they will wait for the governor to pass every morning, and then they'll stand up, led by Muindi Mbingu. They'll stand up and salute him. In jest, in a mocking manner. And this went on for like 6 weeks. Muindi Mbingu around this time, he had also organized how food will come from Machakos to these people here in Nairobi. Yeah, it was that organized. They camped there for 6 good weeks. And they would go on, were it not for the governor's wife, whom it is said that one morning she was passing around and she saw the women who were struggling with breastfeeding and the children, how they were suffering around there. And she was touched. So she went and talked to her husband, Sir Robert Brooke, the governor. And Sir Robert Brooke then agreed to meet them, but only in Machakos. It is in that meeting that it is stated the fateful happened. The governor asked the people of Muindi Mbingu, what do you people want? And it is said that Muindi Mbingu replied in the Kikamba dialect. And this is what he said. I will try. My Kikamba is, I'm sorry if I butcher it, but this This is what he said. Twende twikala twa mau mau maitu. Tuithie ng'ombe twa mau mau maitu. Nundu inthino nia mau mau maitu. Which is loosely translated to, in English, we want to live like our grandfathers. To keep cattle like our grandfathers. For this land is our grandfather. The reference to mau mau, the grandfathers, struck some sort of reference to the colonialist heads. And quickly, they started accusing him of starting the Mau Mau uprising. And from this time, 1938, the colonialists accused Muindi Mbingu of starting the Mau Mau revolt. It's also against these accusations that they arrested and detained him for 7 years in Lamu. Nevertheless, that meeting led the governor, Sir Robert Brooke, on 25th August in Machakos to announce an end to the compulsory selling of cattle to the British-owned meat canning farm. But he maintained the destocking policy and the cattle quotas policies. The Akamba people did not comply. They refused. They were so enraged. And even though they did not resist violently, they refused to comply with the policies that were still in place. And it is stated that probably the colonial government feared a revolt, and that's why they even returned some of the cattle that had been confiscated. And they also didn't follow up with the destocking policy and the cattle quotas policies. In fact, they expressed their intention to proceed with the land conservation issue through educational reforms and voluntary land conservation practices. After Muindi Mbingu was released, it is stated that he was compromised by the then district commission to an extent that he became compliant and even collaborative with the colonialists. This annoyed the people. It annoyed them so much that it led to the brutal murder of Muindi Mbingu in 1953. This murder intensified and led to the climax of the Mau Mau revolution, as many people felt enraged and now even more people supported the Mau Mau revolution. So yes, it is after gaining independence that the then first president of our nation, Jomo Kenyatta, saw it fit to rename the street from Stewart Street to the legendary Muindi Mbingu Street. Now you know it.